Hi, my name is Aymie. I'm a social emotional learning facilitator, and I work to support children on the autism spectrum, their families, teachers, educators, administrators, and other educational professionals here in the Los Angeles Unified School District. I'm also a parent to a child on the autism spectrum myself. And over these next 30 minutes, I hope to share some strategies, support, and information that can help you and your family during these challenging times. So, what is autism? Well, the CDC, Center for Disease Control, defines autism spectrum disorder as a developmental disability that can cause significant social, communication, and behavioral challenges. So, a few key words to highlight from that definition. The first are social, behavioral, and communication. These are the challenges for our children on the autism spectrum. Autism has nothing to do with a cognitive function. Autism does not indicate how smart our children are or are not. It has to do with social, behavioral, and communication challenges. The other word that I think is important to remember is developmental. This means things change and improve over time. I know that my child, as well as your child, is growing and developing on their own pace. Because when you know one child with autism, you know one child with autism. I love what Temple Grandin said. Autism is not a disability, it's a different ability. Autism can be reliably diagnosed as early as 18 months, and boys are diagnosed 4 times more than girls. Currently, autism is diagnosed in 1 out of every 53 children. And some of the early warning signs of autism are lack of eye contact, not responding to name, social withdrawal, and lack of gesture or pointing. There are many strengths for our children on the autism spectrum, and they include a unique sense of humor, detail-oriented, honesty, a desire to connect, focus, a good memory, fair and just, and an intelligence and a special interest. Einstein, Thomas Jefferson, Andy Warhol, Dan Aykroyd, Susan Boyle are all successful people who are on the autism spectrum. But this success isn't just limited to celebrities, scientists, and comedians. Everyone on the autism spectrum is capable of their own successes, and each one is special. I always love that part of the video. However, as a father to a child on the spectrum, I know there are also challenges as well. So let's discuss a few of those. There are many challenges for our children on the autism spectrum, from bright lights to heat or cold temperature differences, smells, and of course, loud sounds, not to mention sensory integration challenges that deal with sensitivity to clothing or to touch. All of these things can challenge our children on the autism spectrum. My son, when he was younger, we would go back east to Boston to my family, and I had to explain to my mom that she would have to ask her grandson first if she could give him a hug. My son, all of his clothing tags have to be removed. So these things we have to take in consideration, that our children on the spectrum, they prefer sameness, and they are ultra sensitive to sights and sounds and lights and temperatures. So, why do these challenges occur? Well, think of the thermostat in your home. It regulates your temperature, preventing things from getting too hot or too cold. We, adults and children alike, also have something of a thermostat in ourselves. Our brain and sensory system acts like a thermostat in our bodies, helping to regulate sensory input, emotions, anxiety, attention, and impulses. And so our children on the autism spectrum struggle to regulate these things. This is why there are such struggles with executive functioning, central coherence, which is seeing the forest for the trees, the hidden curriculum of school and social events, social pragmatics, such as understanding we use a whisper voice in a movie theater and we may shout so someone can hear us outside on the recess yard. And of course, self-advocacy and flexible thinking. Self-advocacy can be such a struggle for our children on the spectrum, and they may result in such things as hitting or screaming or meltdowns in response to the struggles they're not able to manage. Flexible thinking is also a struggle because our children on the spectrum, because they have this obsessive need for sameness, have a real struggle with flexibility and when things change. So we've covered a little bit of what causes these struggles for our children on the spectrum. And now I'd like to talk for a little bit about how we can support our children. So first, let's look at how can we support our child to lessen and hopefully prevent a lot of these breakdowns. The first thing to remember is be consistent. Sameness equals safe. When my son was younger, he would eat the same thing for breakfast, a bagel with cream cheese. The bagel had to be cooked in the microwave for 14 seconds, no more or no less, and he could always tell the difference. At first I would get frustrated with this and try to introduce new breakfast cereals and whatnot, and it would just get him frustrated. So I finally understood that this is what made him feel safe in the morning. And for the next 7 years, we had a bagel and cream cheese for breakfast. 14 seconds, no more, no less. Another way to help with consistency is to have a schedule. A daily schedule lets our child know what is coming up next and what they have to do, so there's no anxiety over the unknown. So you can see that this is a version of a schedule. It doesn't have to be anything fancy or complicated. It can be very simple, like a notepad. You want to make sure that you mark everything clearly so your child can understand it and leave plenty of room for transition. You can also use a schedule at night as well, or for lunch, or for any other part of the day that you want to make sure that your child understands what's expected and what they need to do, like going to bed, brushing teeth, getting on our PJs, in bed to read, and then lights out. Ease transitions. Double the time needed, half the stress. The best way that we can ease transitions for our children, especially during this time where we are home all day long, so it may feel as though there are no transitions. But there are a lot of transitions that occur during the day that we as parents may not really think about. From waking up to breakfast, from breakfast to brushing our teeth, from brushing our teeth to getting our clothes on. All of these are transitions that may or may not be challenging for our children on the spectrum. The best thing to do is give more time than we think is needed for a transition. Another way we help with transitions is to use visual cues to prompt the transition. Reward good behavior. It's also important to remember that our children on the spectrum, because of their lack of central coherence, will always interpret a consequence as a punishment. It's hard for them to understand that this consequence is a result of their behaviors. So it's much better to reinforce behavior with positive reinforcers. There are many ways to reward good behavior: praise, extra game time, or even a special treat. Specific praise not only helps our child to understand what they've done well, but to help them create a database of behaviors that they know they can count on that will be successful. Look for non-verbal cues. Some examples of non-verbal communication include facial expressions, tone of voice, movement, appearance, eye contact, gestures, and posture. I could always tell when my child on the spectrum was having a hard day or had a hard day at school. He would come home and go straight to his bed where he has a weighted blanket for pressure, and he would place his face squarely up against his bedroom wall, pushing up against the wall for that proprioceptive input. that would always signal to me it was a hard day. Create a home safety zone. Some examples of a safe space can simply be an area of the bedroom that's blocked off with sheets, or a tent or fort made out of blankets. Maybe it's a closet in your bedroom, or a little area of one room, someplace that is safe, that is private for a child to self-regulate. Self-regulate means to control one's body, emotions, and thoughts to achieve long-term goals. Need to remove themselves from the event and go somewhere private where they can self-regulate. It's also important to remember that our other children who may not be on the spectrum may also need a safe space to go during such an event. Other helpful tools include fidget cubes, squeezy toys, and bubbles. Meltdowns. What can we do? Meltdowns. If you're a parent to a child on the autism spectrum, you know exactly what I'm talking about. There are times when we don't know what has caused our children such grief, but they are clearly melting down before our eyes and we don't know what to do. In the last part of this video, I'm going to talk about 3 basic things that we can do to help our child before, during, and after a meltdown. Before is everything I've already mentioned: schedules, consistency, safety zones, nonverbal cues, reward good behavior, and transitions. At the onset of our children's meltdowns, there are 3 very specific things we can do: assist, suggest, and be patient. Let's look at each one. When we assist our children, we are helping to advocate for them. For example, we can say such things as, "Would you like a glass of water? Do you need to take a break? Maybe we can work on that later." Sometimes our children don't know what they need for help, so we can make a suggestion. Sometimes it's best to offer a contrary suggestion. So we don't say, "Would you stop bouncing that ball against the wall?" but rather say something like, "Why don't we throw that ball outside?" Sometimes during a meltdown, all we can do as parents is simply be patient. We do not overwhelm our children with even more questions of why are they doing this or what's wrong, but rather let them know you are there for them, keep them safe and away from objects that might harm them, let them know they are loved, and be patient. In other words, we must simply find a way to get from here to here. Afterwards, remember to focus on only one problem. Don't overgeneralize. Use specific language. Words like good or nice or bad don't work. And come up with a plan for the future. And lastly, I want you to remember to be kind, not only to your child, but to yourself. Parenting a child on the autism spectrum is a challenging job that requires so much of us. So remember to take time for yourself. Take a bath, keep a journal, or just call a sympathetic friend. But make sure to take time for yourself so you can be the best parent possible. Well, that was a lot of information, and I hope it was helpful. If you have any other questions, please feel free to reach out to me at aga1496@lausd.net. Again, my name is Aymie. Thank you so much.